the Minister, who I hope will be responding both fulsomely and I hope positively to some of the questions and reassurances which I'm going to be asking for during the course of this debate about North Somerset Council's bids, which went in last week for both the Levelling Up Fund and for the Community Renewal Fund. Now, the bid documentation is all somewhere in the bowels of the Minister's department, being gone through in huge detail. So I don't propose to take up an enormous amount of time dwelling on what it says, other than to summarise very briefly, to say that both bids are supported very, very strongly by both my right honourable friend and I. And it's quite noticeable that at the moment North Somerset Council is being run by a rainbow coalition, which is political speak, Mr McCabe, for anybody except for the Tories. And yet here we are, my right honourable friend and I, as the two local Conservative members of Parliament, supporting it too. So this is a cross-party, non-party political, pretty much unanimous set of proposals, which we are urging the Minister to take very, very seriously indeed. And it's true that Weston has come an extraordinarily long way in recent years. I mean, since I was elected 16 years ago, the place has become unrecognisably better, but I think even its most ardent supporters, and I would put myself right at the front of that particular queue, would say we've still got a great deal more that still has to be done. And these two bids, for the Levelling Up Fund and for the Community Renewal Fund, are a key part of making the next steps in Weston-super-Mayor's journey. North Somerset's journey overall, but Weston-super-Mayor's journey in particular. And as I said, without going into too much detail on what's in the detail of the bids, it's just worth summarising that there are sort of three main areas that I would highlight briefly here. One is the renewal of our local heritage assets. Weston-super-Mare was primarily built during the Victorian seaside town heyday. It has some beautiful architecture, it has many beautiful bits of local heritage to it, some of it going back much further than the Victorian era. There's an Iron Age hill fort, for example. But renewing those assets, making current use of them so that they can continue to be used, continue to be looked after, and that they are part of the town's story, but also part of the town's future, not just its past, is essential. That's a key part of the bid. It gives the place its character, it gives the place its sense of place, and is an absolutely essential part of the bid as well. Equally, the bid involves a whole series of proposals for more festivals, more activities, more attractions, everything from street theatre through to buskers, in order to create a sense of theatre, a sense of dynamism and a sort of buzzing atmosphere, which will make the place not just great to visit for and to live in for local residents, but also, because we are a seaside town, because we are a visitor destination, a great place for visitors to come. And of course, visitors traditionally have been one of the town's lifeblood industries, because we are a tourism destination. So that is an essential piece of the bids. And finally, last but not least, it dovetails with the Western placemaking strategy. And that means that we have input from both local businesses, from local residents, and from the council to try and make sure that Weston, as a location, it has a sustainable mix, but also a balanced mix of reasons to live there, reasons to visit there, reasons to do business there, and to create wealth as well. So the placemaking strategy is essential, and it is also a key part of what we're involved with and what the council's put together on these two bids. So, Mr McCabe, if the bid's so flipping brilliant, why am I here worried, and why have I asked for this debate, and why have we got the pleasure of the Minister's company this afternoon? And the answer is very simple, that in spite of the quality of the bid, in spite of the cross-party backing that I mentioned earlier on, in spite of all those things, Mr McCabe, there is one fly in the ointment, which is that North Somerset Council as a whole, the entire district, the Minister will know, is currently ranked or designated as a priority 2 area for both the two funds that we are bidding into. Not a priority 1, but a priority 2. And that's potentially a problem, because it might demote us in terms of the urgency and importance and eligibility for some of these bids. And I'm here to argue today that that is actually a mistake, because, or that would be a mistake were it to happen, simply because North Somerset as a district overall is a place of stark contrasts. My right honourable friend's constituency is one of the wealthiest constituencies in the country, whereas my constituency of Weston-super-Mare is, if I can put it simply, is not. And if you compare it, for example, to two neighbouring district councils, both of which are priority area 1, and those two district councils, which I'm sure the Minister will be familiar with, are both Sedgemoor and Mendip district councils. They are right next door to the town of Weston-super-Mare. They are almost identical in terms of their populations to my constituency as a whole. So if my constituency was a district council, it would be pretty much the same size as each of them. And yet my constituency has a higher proportion of people claiming benefits than either of those two priority 1 areas, even though I am technically designated as priority 2. My constituency has a lower healthy life expectancy than either of those two neighbouring districts, even though they are designated as priority 1 and I am designated as priority 2. My constituency has a worse average travel time to employment than either of those two districts. Even though they are designated as category 1, priority 1, I'm designated as priority 2. So I hope the Minister will understand why I am concerned that we should, were we a standalone unit, were we a standalone piece of geography, not part of the broader North Somerset Council area, we would easily qualify as being priority area 1, but because of the accident of postcodes, if I can put it that way, because of the averaging effect, we don't. And of course that doesn't mean to say that the need in my constituency of Weston-super-Mare isn't extremely serious and isn't every bit as serious as those other district councils that I just mentioned, both of which are priority area 1. I'd also go further and say that I've just given him, the Minister, the figures for my constituency as a whole. Within my constituency, the situation is even starker. So if you go to two particular wards in the centre of Weston, that's Weston-super-Mare South and Weston-super-Mare Central wards, they have indices of multiple deprivation which would rank them in the top or worst, depending on how you look at it, 3 or 4%. In fact, one of them, parts of it are worse 2% in the entire country. So they are the equivalent of parts of anywhere else, which is right at the top of priority area 1. So it isn't just that we would scrape into priority area 1, we would be right at the top of the Minister's list of concerns, and rightly so, because of those indices of multiple deprivation scores. So what are both I and my right honourable friend hoping to hear from the Minister when he gets to his feet in a minute? And the answer, Mr McCabe, is very, very simple. I'm hoping to hear from him that we are able, and that he is able, to give strong weighting to those overall scores which are at a lower, more detailed, more granular level than the district as a whole, and that he can give due regard to them when assessing the bid, because on the strength of the bid on its own, as I mentioned right at the start, I hope it will qualify on its own steam in any case. We don't want to have a strong and capable bid being disallowed because of an accident of postcode, because of the averaging effect. And I hope therefore that he will be able to reassure me and the residents of the constituency of Weston-super-Mare, and within it the town of Weston-super-Mare, that is not going to be the case, and that the bureaucratic process can be bent and manipulated sufficiently within the rules in order to allow the genuine need, the genuine levels of multiple deprivation to be properly taken account of when these bids are finally totaled up. If he can do that, I may not be able to guarantee that we will erect a small statue in his name somewhere in the middle of Weston-super-Mare, but I can at least promise him we will probably be able to carry him shoulder high along the western seafront easily, given the importance of these bids to the people of Weston-super-Mare. And with that, Mr McCabe, I plan to sit down to make sure that my right honourable friend has an opportunity to add to what I've already said and to explain the perspective from the other part of the North Somerset District Council area.
The question is that this House has considered levelling up bids in North Somerset. Dr Liam Fox.
Thank you very much, Mr McCabe. I come here to support my honourable friend in the case that he has made. And I'm all too aware that my constituency does not qualify for money under the levelling up bid and would have only a small chance of seeing any money under the Community Renewal Fund. But I'm here to give my support for two reasons. Firstly, the generic, and secondly, the specific. On the generic case, it is all too often in our country, as many of us will attest in our time in Parliament, that areas of deprivation that happen to be in the same district or the same constituency as relative affluence can actually disappear in the data. The sensitivity and specificity of the data can actually mean that they don't show up at all. And that is certainly the case. If you look at Weston-super-Mare Town, as my honourable friend said, you will see it very clearly. If you add Weston-super-Mare into the rest of that parliamentary constituency, you don't see it very well at all. If you add it into the rest of North Somerset District, which includes my constituency, which, as my honourable friend has said, is one of the most affluent constituencies in the country, then they can all but disappear. And when you consider the differences in Weston-super-Mare itself, unemployment is twice the rate that it is in my constituency just next door. The health profile in my constituency is much better than that in Weston-super-Mare. Income is higher, and the quality of jobs is also better. So lest anyone thinks this is a case of pure altruism, we then come to the specifics. It's very important that Weston-super-Mare, being the biggest town in our district, its status matters. And the quality that visitors, it gets very many more tourists than you will get in places like Clevedon in my constituency, which of course is a very well-kept, upmarket Victorian tourist town. But most visitors will go to Weston-super-Mare. And the quality of the services that they perceive there is important to the status of the district as a whole. It is also, I think, very important that we recognise that just because you live in a relatively poor part of a wealthy area, you must not be disregarded. I have often felt that in this country, the two things you do not want to be are poor in a rich area or sick in a healthy area, because when it comes to service and public provision, you tend to be not ignored, but not seen by those who are planning that provision, which is why I think this is so important, for all the reasons my honourable friend set out there and the purposes that this money could be put to. It is something that I know that my constituents, although they recognise they won't benefit directly from this money, will benefit indirectly by the improved status that Weston-super-Mare could enjoy. I just end by saying that one of my councillors said, why will we not get levelling up money in my constituency, because it's being done on a constituency basis. I had to point out to him that the status and many of the indicators in my constituency are what people are levelling up to. It's not something you level up from. And therefore, it is with the greatest sincerity that I can say that this is something that we are completely joined as one, and with our council, which does not share our political views, because we believe it's to the benefit of all of the people in North Somerset, whether they are direct recipients of the money or indirect recipients of the benefits that money can actually achieve. So I say to my honourable friend the Minister that this is entirely cross-district bid. It's supported for both the levelling up bid and the Community Renewal Fund for all the reasons set out so eloquently by my constituency neighbour. And I hope that he will take fully into account this question that we must not allow deficiencies in the sensitivity and specificity of data to mean that because you happen to be poor in a wealthy area, you're not seen by this government.
Minister Luke Hall.
Thank you, Mr McCabe. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, I think for the first time. And can I congratulate my honourable friend from Weston-super-Mare for securing this debate. He spoke with eloquence and passion about the importance of supporting his constituency and the need to level up in Weston-super-Mare. I think that that desire to support his community is something that is shared by all parts and all corners of this government, and certainly, of course, by MHCLG. Perhaps we can just start by setting the context here, Mr McCabe, on levelling up. This is a crucial part of our government's agenda. We are committed to unlocking economic prosperity across all parts of the country in the United Kingdom, and that's why we're publishing the Levelling Up white paper later this year. We'll be setting out bold policy interventions to improve livelihoods and opportunities in all parts and all corners of the country, and that is going to set out our next steps in our plan to enable more people to get on in life without the feeling that they have to leave their hometown or their home community just to get the job that they want or the type of services that they want to see. We want to address these long-standing geographical inequalities. We want to deliver economic opportunity, improve livelihoods in all parts of the country. So wherever you were born, you have the chance to achieve what you want to in life. And that means creating new good quality jobs. It means boosting training, productivity, skills in places that have seen economic decline and the loss of industry, not through a broad one-size-fits-all approach, but by nurturing the different types of economic growth and building on the strength that different types of places and communities have. And I think there is nowhere more important than places like Weston-super-Mare in these types of conversations and debate. We've heard about how skills or wages lag behind the average in the southwest and indeed many different parts of the country too. And that's why the Levelling Up Fund as a concept is so important and such an important vehicle to invest in communities just like Weston-super-Mare. We want to work with councils like North Somerset to invest in this type of everyday infrastructure that my honourable friend has outlined, regenerating town centres, high streets, investing in transport, supporting cultural and heritage assets right around the country. That's a key part of the Levelling Up agenda. It's about local communities and councils like North Somerset determining and identifying their own priorities and using this as vehicles to develop proposals, to submit them and to level up in their area. It's about empowering communities. Of course, the deadline for the bid closed last Friday and we received significant interest from right around the country. The assessment process is just starting now, but of course we were delighted that North Somerset submitted their bid in last week, and we've heard a lot about some information about the proposal this afternoon. I think it's important for us to really assess the impact of this proposal. It's interesting to understand about the transformation of the pier, the Tropicana Weston, two of the historic buildings that really bookend the north and south end of the pier, which is so important to the town and to the regional tourism economy as well. And also about bringing back to use vacant spaces within the main shopping area in Weston, helping to create those new employment spaces as well, and those enhanced wayfinding and connections through the town centre. I completely understand the passion and importance that my honourable friend has highlighted these bids into our department. I understand his belief and his desire to see these succeed and the importance that he places on the potential for the transformation of Weston's future, the importance of enabling economic growth, improving economic resilience for the town as well, and helping to tackle deprivation. The bids focus on regeneration, on town centre improvements, on the cultural assets that he's talked about, on transport improvements, accurately reflect the themes of what we're trying to achieve with the fund. So I thank North Somerset for its bid. I thank my right honourable friend for their support of the bids and making clear the importance of it to his community. I hope he understands I can't comment too much further on the actual bid itself today, but we will certainly be working to the timescales that we've set out in the prospectus to make sure that the decisions are delivered in a timely way. In regards to the Levelling Up Fund's methodology by which we have set out the three categories of places, we set this out in the prospectus to deliver the bids will be assessed against the criteria that we set out in the prospectus, and then they will be shortlisted as a set of strongest bids. My honourable friends notes, of course, that Weston-super-Mare, part of North Somerset, is a category 2, despite having similar characteristics in Weston-super-Mare to a number of category 1 places. The design of the fund one of the ways when we looked at the fund, we tried to purposely make sure that councils are able to target the pockets of deprivation within their local authorities as he has identified. In the case of North Somerset's bid, as we've heard, we've had 2 MPs helping to shape a bid within a council area, both supporting it, and that will be noted as part of the process. They have both supported this bid tackling, which is aimed towards the most deprived part of the local authority area. So that is absolutely noted as part of the assessment process. We, I think, will be looking at the way that it addresses the challenges that are facing the town, whether that's on health, unemployment, the availability of well-paid jobs for people living within Weston-super-Mare. I think the focus on tackling deprivation in Weston is very much again in line with the objectives of the fund. In relation to the methodology that sits behind the index of places, again this is set out in the prospectus that we've published on gov.uk, but it's based on the metrics covering places' need for economic recovery, the need for regeneration and the need for improved transport connectivity, as is clearly identified by the old gentleman's speech. That they don't determine either the outcome of the bid or the place's eligibility to bid, and again we certainly take account of the fact that 2 members of Parliament have supported that bid targeted at a pocket of deprivation. So I don't know whether that warrants the statue in Weston-super-Mare, perhaps a sandcastle perhaps, but he also raised the point of the indices of multiple deprivation and asked the question about those not being included in the methodology of the fund. This is an important point. We did consider looking at the IMD as part of this, as part of the index. I think the important thing to consider, though, is that IMD doesn't represent in all circumstances a one-size-fits-all approach for measuring economic need. It doesn't completely accurately reflect in this circumstance the policy outcomes of the fund that we've established, which is that regeneration, that transport regeneration, high street and cultural regeneration. And there are some things that IMD does not look at and does not consider. For example, productivity, and raising productivity is a key part of the fund that we're trying to address as well. So it was considered, but we do think that the way the indexation was set up is ultimately right. My honourable friend also referenced the UK Community Renewal Fund, another important funding stream that this government is delivering. We think that will improve the overall funding landscape available to places like Weston-super-Mare. I think what we've tried to do is establish a 1-year transition programme that is free of some of the shackles and bureaucracy of the EU structural funds that we saw before them, and to allow places to design bids that tackle the problems that they identify before them. It's a £220 million fund available to communities next year. We've received North Somerset's bid. I think it's a £2.8 million bid that includes a number of employment-based bids, including tailored support for job seekers in the most deprived communities. That will absolutely be noted. And I believe also amongst the proposals there is a financial inclusion project. There's a network of community hubs in rural areas and targeted business support as well. So we're very interested to receive that. I also understand the bid sets out how, when taken together, these will all work to create new education and training opportunities that will lead to the establishment of new local businesses and help to steer people towards the right employment and education opportunities. I do also want to highlight, if I can, the importance of members of Parliament's role in this process. And I think this debate is a prime example of the way we designed the fund, having such an importance of members of Parliament coming together to bring communities together, like local authorities, like local stakeholders, and acting as real facilitators in this debate, as you have highlighted you've managed to do through such a cross-party way in Weston-super-Mare, in a way that submits a bid that tackles the challenges in the way you have outlined. So we have given the opportunity for MPs to write formally and support the bids, and we've received the Honourable Friend's letter to do so. I can have a good way.
Thank the Minister for giving way. He's been very, very helpful, and is sort of showing that his department is already getting to grips with the details of the bids behind it. So I thank him for his remarks so far. Could he just make sure, in the 5 minutes or so that are left, that he focuses on this point about the priority areas? I'm still not quite clear. I think he's been helpful around that area, but I'm still not quite clear whether or not, if we are starting from a priority area 2 designation, whether or not that relegates us automatically to being a long way down the list of projects being considered, or whether or not the other factors which I have talked about and which he has also mentioned very carefully and very fulsomely in his remarks will allow us to vault up the list of eligible projects to get a better showing in the eventual decisions on allocations.
Minister.
Yes, I think it's really important to say that that indexation is just one part of the wider improvement, of the wider assessment process. So the categorisation into category 2, yes, that is taken into account. However, there are a number of other factors in the assessment that are also taken into account, just like the Members of Parliament support. And I think it's really noteworthy on this bid that 2 Members of Parliament are backing a bid that is targeted towards the areas of deprivation. I think alongside, so I urge the gentlemen to look at the information we set out on gov.uk, which clearly sets out that it's just one part of the assessment process. So yes, the weighting has an impact, but so does strategic fit, so does deliverability, so does value for money as well in the bids. Those are all important parts of the process. It is not solely determined just by the categorisation into level 2. I also, if I can, would just like to remark about the importance of other investment outside of just those 2 streams of funding into North Somerset, because I think if you look at what the government is doing across the southwest room, investing over £400 million into the region through the Getting Building Fund, the Future High Street Fund, the Towns Fund that's delivering so much for the southwest. And I think if you look at the business support that we put into North Somerset, for example, you'll see £73 million of support for businesses and business grants. We've also ensured that Weston has benefited from the Getting Building Fund. I think they're receiving over £1.5 million, £1.7 million for the town centre investment as part of that wider £13.5 million package across the area for shovel-ready projects in Weston, and the need for regeneration and investment in the high streets is also so evident in so many of our communities, and I think the funding that has been allocated is already going to be supporting the vacant Weston general store site, and that's going to be creating new workspaces for entrepreneurs, for micro-manufacturing, for events, for community spaces, and that will help breathe huge new life into the town centre as well. So that's not to be underestimated. And I do think that residents can look forward, of course, to the reopening of the Portishead rail line for the first time in 50 years. That's going to be a vital transport link between North Somerset and the surrounding employment areas. And of course, these interventions that we're discussing, both through the Levelling Up Fund, the Community Renewal Fund, the Getting Building Fund, the policies I've outlined, build on the £200 million we've invested across the wider area in recent years to support housing, to support skills, to support transport, and that includes the 2 state-of-the-art training centres providing work-focused education at Weston College, the almost £12 million that we've supported in the Foodworks Innovation Centre near Weston. That's a regional centre of excellence in this growing sector. It includes the major town centre transport improvements, including new cycle and pedestrian links across the town centre. So there is huge investment in the region, and I think in Weston-super-Mare as well. I've hoped that some of my remarks have helped reassure him that there are a number of factors that go into the categorisation of the assessment of this bid. It's not just the category place that determines the outcome of his bid. I very much look forward to seeing all the detail of the bid. We've had a number of them. We have to now look through them in detail. I know he is as passionate as I am about levelling up in communities in the southwest and, of course, in Weston. As we've set out, we want every community to have the opportunity to shape their own future through locally designed solutions. I very much look forward to him on doing that, as we look forward to the road for recovery for Weston-super-Mare.
The question is that this House has considered levelling up bids in North Somerset. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Order, order.